Hey friends, this week's episode was a highly requested one from our Minnesota listeners, and I can't wait for you to hear this journey. Today's guest is Mary Conley. Mary is an entrepreneur, fashion influencer, blogger, mom, and wife to Timberwolves point guard Mike Conley. In this episode, we dive into keeping your identity in a world where it's very easy to lose it, balancing motherhood, and how her and Mike have navigated the NBA for the last 17 years. I loved doing this episode with Mary, and I can't wait for you to take a listen. Okay, so we have Mary here with us today. Mary, thank you for joining the podcast.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
I'm excited too. This has been a highly requested episode, by the way. Yes, especially when I posted it on my story, the questions started coming in.
Good.
I like to start this podcast with asking how you met your spouse and like what that journey was like. So tell me how you and Mike met.
We met at college our freshman year.
Ohio?
At Ohio State,
Okay.
yes. Yeah, we both went to Ohio State. So we met there. It had been after the basketball season, and I never even went to a basketball game, so I really didn't know him or the hype of how great their team was that year. Mm-hmm. But we had just met out and about, and then he happened to live above the best like freshman restaurant. So I was always there, and I saw him, and then we swapped numbers and kind of just hit it off from there. And then he got drafted. I stayed in school. So we had gone out a couple times, but just knew our lifestyles are very different. I was studying biology, trying to graduate and get into grad school. And he was doing the MBA thing. So we just kept in touch. And then my senior year of college.
I'm like, whoa, just kidding.
Senior year of college, got a little more serious.
Okay.
And then I moved down to Memphis with him that September. And that's been it.
Been together ever since.
Yes.
And how long have you guys been together?
So we met in 2007.
Okay. And so that's almost, 17-ish
Yeah.
years.
And then moved in 2010.
Okay.
And then, our 10-year wedding anniversary is this summer. So that's a fun one.
Okay. So Mary, how did you navigate that, like your life from college student to then becoming the partner of a pro athlete? I mean, you had your own dreams and own goals. You had gotten your degree. So what was that initial feeling like?
I think the transition from college life to NBA girlfriend life was definitely harder than I imagined it would be. Different, but very similar to the trades. It's really hard and it's very, very different. I went from being a full-time student and having multiple jobs to where, you go to class, then you work for a couple hours in between, then you go back to class, then you go nanny, then you come home and go to night class and work out and do this. And then I had all this free time all of a sudden, but I was, I graduated with a degree, my bachelor's in biology, and I was planning to go to dental school. I did not get into Ohio State, but I was like, let me just take a year off and figure out what's going on. But I didn't want to sit around and do nothing. It's not in my nature to do that. Mm-hmm. And I felt like I couldn't get a career job because I knew that we would be leaving in the summers. Right. And, who's going to hire you for 8 months and then just let you go? Right. So that was really tricky. So I ended up volunteering at the hospital because I was like, oh, it's science related. Let me try and do that. So we would volunteer. I became part of like the garden club in our neighborhood and just tried to put myself in the community as much as I could. But that was hard. I just felt like I didn't have a purpose, and for people like, oh, so what do you do now? Like, and people would ask my parents, like, what's Mary doing after graduation? Nothing. They wouldn't say that, but I just felt like they couldn't proudly say like, oh, she got a job at X, Y, and Z, and she's this. And so I was just like down on myself about that. And that transition was hard. This is a little embarrassing story. So when, so I had told Michael, I expressed all of this to him on how I was like, what do I do? I need a job. I need money and all this stuff. And so he's like, well, let me introduce you to Chantel, who's like the Sydney here. So she's worked her way up and she'd been with the Grizzlies for a long time and in charge of like the families at the time. She can help you with the stuff. And then I also met with a woman named Teresa who was in charge of all of the like community investment and volunteer work that the players did. I legit brought a resume in a binder to my meeting with them because I was like, they're going to get me a job. Yes. And I just like packed my bag. I think I wore a blazer. I was like so professional because I was like, okay, this is my chance. It was like a little mini job interview in my head. Little did I know now looking back that they're just like the ones who help us like with anything. Right. It it was just a very young me. Yeah. And I'm like, oh, that's so cute. Of like, yes. And I was like, oh my God, like, I can't believe I did that. Didn't tell anybody for years. I think finally, like 10 years later, I told Chantel, do you know I brought my resume to the first time?
Oh, you never pulled it out?
No, because once I saw the direction the conversation was going, I was like, okay, this isn't a job interview. It was just kind of like, oh, what are your interests? Where do you want to work? Because then they could connect me with like HR somewhere to get the job.
Right.
So it was just very funny, but it was hard. I'm like, what can I do? And then we actually had a lockout my second year.
Oh, shoot.
So then that next season started late.
Yeah.
So then we were in Ohio. And again, I'm like, well, now I thought I'd only be here for a few months, but now we're here longer and longer. And I'm still not. And I picked up sewing. I made jackets and like just sewed things. So I always try and pick up a hobby or a craft or some sort. But then in Memphis, I definitely found, because you don't have kids.
Yeah.
They're time consuming. But I feel like if you don't have that, what are you doing with all of your time? Mm-hmm. And they're gone a lot of the time. So I think volunteering helped. The organization had us volunteer once a month as well with other girlfriends. Like we did our own stuff, which was really fun. And then I worked at a clothing store and they were flexible with the schedule. I styled a couple of his teammates for a little bit, which was random and fun. And then I worked for a small magazine out of Mississippi and styled them for a year. So it was fun. I did end up finding my way to fulfill my purpose and do things that made me happy. And so that felt good. But it was hard at first. And I feel like even some of the girls coming in here now who worked and had their own apartment and all their own stuff, then you're invited to move in with your boyfriend. And it's like, well, now what do I do? Like, now I don't have anything. Like I gave all my stuff up and I appreciate that. But I'm also like, it makes you nervous.
Yeah, it's also like a bit of an identity crisis too. Because it's like then you just become so-and-so's girlfriend or so-and-so's wife, and you're like, well, there's so much more to me, and I had all these other ideas, but it is such a sacrifice that, I always like on TikTok, I don't know if you see it either, is like girls are like, oh, I want to be a NFL wife, I want to be an NBA wife, and I want this, and I'm like, that's not that's not realistic. Like that's not how this works.
No, maybe start with like wanting to be a wife.
Yes.
And
and I'm also I'm like, you have no idea the sacrifices that so many of these women make because you have these big dreams of being a dentist, a doctor, a lawyer, a this, a that, but you realistically cannot do that.
Yeah. I just can't imagine.
It's hard.
Like
you can, but it's just extremely
hard.
Difficult.
Yeah.
It's even more sacrifice.
And I think we, coming into the situation we're aware that we'll have to make sacrifices for their career. Because we want to support them, but they don't get days off. Again, like he missed the birth of our last child. We planned all of our babies for the summer. But with COVID and the bubble, it didn't work out. So like we tried to, but those are sacrifices that we have to make. And I'm not mad at like he came home, but was there for 24 hours and then had to leave again. And that was a huge sacrifice he had to make as a dad to leave again.
Right.
But also as a teammate to leave for the birth, and it's like, well, it's your family, but then you're paid to do your job. And so it's just like, there's a lot of yo-yoing and going back and forth. And it's just, and then even with stuff today, decisions he makes, it's always like a family decision. And I'm like, it's your job, it's your career. Like, I'm here to support you. So you do what's going to be best for you. And then we will be there to be there for you.
Yeah.
But he's like, but it's your decision too. I'm like, but not really. Like, but also it is like, we're literally in this 50-50. Like I'm the one, doing it, but like, I can't do it without you. And I need your support and you need to want to be wherever we are as well. So that's important that I know he includes me in all of that stuff, even though they're such big decisions. I'm like, I don't want any parts.
Yeah, that's me with some stuff. Everyone's like, what do you think? I'm like, I think what you think.
Yes.
You do whatever you want to do, and I support
right
it
there.
100%. Yeah, because it's ultimately like it is their career, and you don't want them to ever feel like a decision wasn't theirs.
Yes.
Because this opportunity is so once in a lifetime.
Yeah.
Like they're 0.0% of people in the world that get to do this. Right. So it's like you don't want to be the one to call a shot that blows the whole thing up.
Yes.
So I'm like, you got it and we'll figure it out.
Yes. And now it's been nice because now like with any of my ventures or ideas I have, he's so supportive of them. And it's like, again, I'm just bad at starting stuff because like where do you even begin? Like the research behind it and just to make sure it like logistically works and the time and money and all of that. And he's always like, well, what do you need? Who I'm like, I don't know how to do this. Well, who do you want to talk to? You got to talk to somebody. Reach out to this person. Do this. I'm like, because I didn't know I could. I just always feel like I have to do everything on my own. He's like, call someone. Like, they'll help you. Yeah. So
he's like, we have resources.
Yes. Yeah. Like, you don't have to figure everything out by yourself. What so-and-so think? I'm like, I didn't ask. Right. But I will. Thank you.
Yeah. Just I needed a moment of panic really quick. And then you'll come to of like, okay, now we problem solve. Okay, but you mentioned that you planned your babies around the season.
Yes.
And then the third, it was different because it was the bubble. But like, do you think like that is so crazy that we have to do that?
Yeah, it is. And I mean, I was fortunate to be able to try because I guess I'm fertile and it worked. So right. I'm grateful for that. Obviously, if you want a baby, you just have to do it whenever you can and make it work.
Right.
But it's just a lot trickier to navigate if it's going to be in season, as we all know with the little baby boom that happened with our team.
Right.
So many of them, it's like you go into labor and they're away. And you could be induced. Like when he was in the bubble, I was like, why don't you be induced? That way he'll know to come on this date. You'll have the baby, then he'll come back. I'm like, because I don't want to. Like, that wasn't part of the plan. Yeah. Not that it really matters, but I'm like, I just want to go into labor. I want the baby to come when my body's ready for it to come. Right. And, everything works together. And so, then I ended up calling him and, it's like 5 a.m, so it didn't work. So then I had to call one of the trainers and he had to call his hotel phone because they're really loud to wake him up. He's like, I put on Do Not Disturb because he came a little early. So he wasn't ready, like prepared. If it was like the countdown, then he would have had his phone on. But I was really fortunate with all my other summer. Well, I had a spring baby in May.
Okay.
But that was like one of 2 years he didn't make the playoffs. I was like, phew.
Yeah.
So we still got to go to Ohio and where my main support is. So I had all my babies there. But it's just, but I mean, I guess teachers plan their babies around their spring breaks or summer breaks for their like time off, so there, a couple of people have planning, but if you want your partner to be around,
you have to
go for the off season.
Because it's like, even a lot of the girls are like, there's been conversations where it's like, no, I'd understand if they're in the finals. I'd understand if he wasn't. And that's like a crazy thing to come to terms with on everyone's part, and where there's no resentment and there's no like.
I remember my mother-in-law, she said that my father-in-law missed the birth of her second child because he's a track star.
Okay.
And so he was overseas competing and like didn't make it back from Germany in time. Like he was really, really far away. And when she first told me that, I was just appalled at the fact that I was like, what? I can't imagine that. And now, of course, I'm like slowly behind her shoes. Yeah. And I'm like, bummer, I get it, but it's okay.
Right. I get it. It is what it is. You have to do a job. Have you found, or I guess, how do you find purpose now?
Honestly, I love being a mom. I love being a wife, and I'm just happy. Like, it's what I've always wanted, and they like fill me up, like truly fill my heart up. And I'm so happy and absolutely love doing it. I'm proud of the house we have. I'm proud of the yard that I maintain, just everything. Yeah. And again, my new little business venture, just everything I do that makes me happy. Phone conversation with friends. Like my friend just had her second baby. I got to talk to her for a while. So just picking up the phone, calling people, talking, all of that really makes me happy.
I am finding the older I get that like purpose looks different than what I thought it did when I was younger. Whereas like when I was younger, it was like a job and it was something that I was like chasing. And now it's doing for others. It's being able to contribute to something like bigger than myself. It's this podcast. Like this podcast fills me in the most like beautiful way. And I think like that will continue to change. I don't think we have just one purpose, but I do find that my outlook on life is just changing so much with the older I get. And it's not a job. It's not, a certificate. It's not another degree, because I chase that too. And I'm like, okay, I'm about to graduate and I am like officially this. And then I'm like, but no.
And I think like the older you get, you realize your purpose is just for you and what makes you happy and fulfills you, as opposed to like outside sources and their influence. At the time where it's like, oh, I feel like I need to do X, Y, and Z because other people would think that that's great. But that if it's not going to make you happy, it's not going to fulfill you.
Right.
In the end of the day. So to keep that in mind.
Yeah. Okay. So you guys are clearly vets.
Yeah.
in the NBA world, and you guys are just looked up to by so many. Everyone, when they say Mike or Mary, it's just like great things that come to mind. And I remember when you guys got traded here, Montana was like, "You're so lucky. You guys are so lucky. You're getting Mary and Mike. They're the best people ever." I feel like that's common. Where does like, how do you guys, obviously you're genuinely good people, but how do you guys like make so many deep connections, I guess, with so many people along your journey?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And I'm, so happy to hear that so many people do look up to us and respect us. I definitely have a lot of pride in our relationship and how I communicate and what we have together, what we've built as a family, but also his team and their spouses and my friends and everybody. And it's not easy. It's definitely a lot of hard work.
Yeah.
But I think at the end of the day, you just always have to remember who you are. And no matter what success you've had or how much money you've made or who you've become, to stay truly who you are from the beginning, and it doesn't matter that I'm a vet and we've been in this for almost 2 decades. Like, I'm still going to treat the rookie's girlfriend the exact same way I'm going to treat a big times girlfriend, So I just think I make an effort to do that. And I think, but it also stems from him. Like, can you imagine if they were out on the court and they, like, he was like, "Oh, I'm going to teach this guy because he has more potential than this guy."
Right.
Like, I just think it's important to always treat everybody evenly. And it's been fun. And I've had my moments of being young and in the league and people not that people were mean to me, but, give you side eye or judge you or just question your reasons for being there.
Right.
And I will make sure that I never do that. And anybody that I see is feeling that way, I will step in to have their back because it's uncomfortable and it's not fair. So I just keep all that in mind.
Yeah. I love that you mentioned that, of like that feeling, especially when you're like a girlfriend going into fiance versus wife. Like, some teams do operate with that mentality, but I like that you knowing like what that feels like to be in each level. You're like, I'm going to make sure a woman doesn't feel that, at least from me. You can't control what other people do, but
definitely can't control everybody else.
Yeah.
But I want everybody to be able to look up to me. And I want, if anybody has questions or wants advice, I want to be able to be like a sounding board. Like, how did you do that? And honestly, I'm looking for advice for things. I'm now at this level where I'm, we're not the face of the franchise, or I'm not like the main girl, or I've got kids now, so people do stuff without me. And I have to like check myself. Like, I'm not 25 trying to go out to clubs anymore. Like,
yeah,
it's like, I want to be left out of that. But at the same time, I'm like, wait, like, I forget where I am in life now, or I'll start to hang out with coaches' wives more because we've got kids the same age. So it's just this whole new circle of life, I guess.
Yeah.
But we're still playing, so not that it matters, but sometimes people go into different groups. But I said, I try and I'll sit down with trainers' wives or coaches' wives or players' wives or parents. Like, I try and truly just talk to everybody and just treat everybody the same and
go from there.
Yeah.
It's crazy that like you guys have been in the league, like you said, for nearly 2 decades. What has that journey been like for you guys as a couple?
I can't believe we're still in it. We'll start with that. I mean, I really did think, he's incredible and that we would be in this journey for a long time, but I really did think he'd be done by the time our kids got to the school age where they would recognize how great he is and how unique of a situation we're in. It's been, I feel like, pretty steady. Like, we've done great and had, little ups and downs with success as far as like the teams go. And then we have our trades, and that's like a very little bumpy ride. And it goes smooth and we figure it out. And then you get traded again, it's bumpy again. And obviously now we're back to smooth sailing and we're comfortable. So there's lots of chapters within the last 17 years of his career. And so.
How do you deal with trades? That's been a big question. I got a lot of questions about that to ask you. And you mentioned like that's when things get a little bit more turbulent. How do you navigate it? And what was like, I guess for Minnesota, what was your initial reaction?
Yeah, I like that trade. I wanted to do a whole podcast on trades and athletes because it's so much. And that you do get a lot of outside people talking. It is the most emotional thing I feel like you can go through. And not to, again, we're fortunate financially to have help and still have great homes. And a lot of people get traded. A lot of people's spouses go overseas and are gone for long periods of time. And I know those situations are very, very different, but I just think it's important to allow yourself, and for the outsiders, allow these individuals to feel the pain. It doesn't have to be forever, but it hurts. It's sad. It's uncomfortable. It's change. Let them feel that, and then we move on. So initially, I knew the trade was happening and coming.
Okay.
And I thought, like, we had discussed it and kind of like how we're going to do things. And then when it actually happened, I was just devastated. I don't know why I took it as such a shock. I think it went in a different direction than we were thinking. So that definitely played a part. And then in the end, it's just like, you know, it's like, oh, we'll be able to, he can go to Minnesota. He'll stay there for a few months and I'll stay in Utah with the kids. We'll wrap up school. Trade, it definitely went a different direction than we were expecting. So I think that may have played a part in my emotions. And I really thought I'd be fine to see him every couple of weeks and just fly out when it was convenient for the kids and I, or just myself. But it was so hard. And now that we do have children and a family of our own, not only is it my emotions I'm dealing with, I have 3 little offspring and I have their emotions that we have to deal with as well. So, you know, when we first got traded from Memphis to Utah, it was hard, but, you know, as a family, we were ready and it was just time for that part of our lives. He'd been there for 12 years and our kids were young. Yeah. So it wasn't that big of a deal. And this time it was like all of their friends that, wait, what? We're not going to see you again. You're not going to live here anymore. And I had such a great community there and so many friends and the influencer world and blogging. And it was just neighbors, schools, the organization, everything was so good. And so then you get traded and it's just so many unknowns. Yeah. And I lived in the same house my whole life. My parents had it for 35 years. I never moved until I went to college. And now I've obviously moved with my husband, but I didn't like change. I'm not comfortable with change, but I've been forced to embrace it. And so I feel like I've done a good job navigating it, only because I'm not going to allow myself to sit there and sulk and be sad when I have a house to take care of and kids to take care of. And then in the end, it's not easy for the guys either. It's hard for them. And if they knew that I was sad, I mean, oh, trust me, he knew I was sad. We cried a lot. I cried a lot to him. But you don't ever want them to feel guilty, like, oh, I shouldn't have left. I mean, he didn't have a choice in that matter. Sometimes
I'm sure they feel bad still putting you in that position.
Yeah, because it's a lot on us. It was very emotional. But the first game I went to, I met you, and all the girls were very nice, and the organization seemed great. You know, there were some things where I was like, I just miss Utah. Right. Like, I don't know. But it's been so great. And I mean, living in Minnesota, it's beautiful. And again, being part of the MBA, that has been allowed us to live in the different cities that I never would have dreamed of. Right. I'm very fortunate for. I've loved everyone I've lived in for their own reasons, and I'm very blessed for that.
And I also think too, you guys got traded mid-season. And I feel like that's the hardest because you're still trekking, you're still in like season mode for Utah, and now you're rooting for a new team. And then there's only like, it's an awkward time to get traded too. It's just like that was one thing where I'm like, I feel like the mid-season trades are tougher than the summer ones when, you know, everything's firing off during.
Yeah. Now that we've had a trade of both, mid-season is definitely harder because they just take you right away. So he got traded, and it was unique that Utah was playing Minnesota during that time, and I wasn't there. I had a trip already planned, but again, I'd already mentally prepared myself for the trade. Not that helped, but so he came home, and my kids were going to watch the game on TV, and like, what are you doing here? And he is incredible at explaining things to the kids in a way that they'll understand. So he kind of told them what was up, but then the next day, my mom had been there to watch the kids while I was out of town. Like, just like a big black car came and just picked him up and took him away to like never be brought back. Right. You know, like with his bag. Yes. And you're just gone. It's just sad. Like it just all happened so fast. Yeah. You know, and it's like, and then you pass your physicals and then 2 days later you're playing again. It's like, wait, you don't get to think about it. You don't even get 24 hours to digest. Right. You're told when everybody else is told. And I think that's surprising to people too. Like, you know, you get the rumors going, but no one's actually telling you, hey, this is going to happen tonight or this is going to happen tomorrow. Right. It just happens. Like the first time I got traded, my brother told me through Twitter. He found out through Twitter. I wasn't even with my husband when it happened. Second time we got traded, I was on a flight, like happened to get service and found out through people texting me like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this is happening. So it's just,
that like makes my stomach hurt.
it does. Your stomach hurts and your heart drops. And it's just like, oh my gosh, it's real. And, you know, you just have your support system but then you find new ones.
Right.
And you make it work.
It is tough because, like you said, we are very blessed and fortunate for the situation, but it doesn't make these types of situations any easier. And as much stability as people think money gives in the NBA, in any pro sport, there is no stability. Really, like you can't plan that far along even if you're under a contract for 2, 3, 4 years, it still doesn't equate to you're going to be here for 2, 3, 4 years.
You can have a 5-year contract, but still get traded mid-season or at the end of the season.
Yeah.
So yeah, you never know. And, you know, obviously like there's always a lot of talk. You know, I feel like you can kind of tell the direction a franchise is going. So sometimes you can tell when it's coming or not. And so we knew they had traded half the team and all the starters that summer. So we thought we were going to get traded that summer. And then they didn't. So we're like, okay, we're still here. Well, now it's probably definitely going to happen by All-Star break. But you still don't know.
Yeah.
And so, and it's like, yeah, you know, we have a beautiful house now. And we had movers help. And I was grateful for that. But then you have like the pediatricians and the pediatric dentist and finding schools and finding sports and getting all the paperwork and getting everything transferred. And that's all for 3 kids. And then I have myself that I have to get all of my stuff taken care of and pets and the utilities. Those are what those got me just to close everything down from the first house and then open up everything with the new house.
Right.
We kind of slowly moved into our Minnesota house and we left for like 3 weeks and we came back and I had forgot to hire lawn people. I had everything done, but totally forgot about that. And we came back. Our grass was like 2 feet tall. Weeds were 5 feet tall. I was so embarrassed and mortified about how bad our yard looked. And I'm like, oh, like how could I have forgot that? But because I had 1,000 things on my mind and nobody else cared.
You're hands-on with all of that stuff. Like it's not like a big team of people because some people do operate with like there's a house manager, there's this, you know, there's so many people. You always are very in the know, in the mix of what's going on.
I always forget that people have resources and delegate all of that.
Yeah.
And I just always have done it. And so I just feel like I know how to do it. And granted, it's very time consuming, but I just do it. And I often think by the time I explain to somebody else how to do it all, I might as well have just done it myself. Right. Now there are some things where I'll have, like our nanny, you know, if the kids are napping, she can help me with stuff. Or my dad's been very helpful with setting cable up and stuff like that. Cause it's like the sitting on the phone for 45 minutes.
I'm not,
it's too much.
I can do 10 things in that time. Yeah.
So I will have like, you know, just people closest to me help do things, but
it's all you.
It's a lot.
How has the adjustment here in Minnesota been?
Much easier than I thought it was going to be. And I think having kids has helped adjust to being here because I'm forced to do stuff. You don't have time to sit and be sad. You have to get out and take your kids here and do this and do that. And then, you know, you meet, like I've met friends through their friends and friends through their sports. And then obviously through the organization, there's lots of girls on the Timberwolves team. So, you know, it like came with 10 friends right away. Right. So it's been good. It's been nice. I was also blessed with a very mild winter this year. So that was helpful.
Yeah. Well, that's good though. And I feel like in particular for us, we have a lot of girls in our age range. Is so wide.
Very.
Like, we have like 19, 20-year-olds and like I'm almost 30. So it's funny because we've been here for 5 years. So when I came in, I was like fresh out of college, good vibes, you know, and now I'm like, okay, like I'm getting older. Okay. And then it's like, then I don't have kids. So then I feel like I'm in that weird place too of like, oh, well, they're doing like kid dates. Yes. And then these ones are taking shots. Yeah. I'm like in the middle, like, okay.
A glass of wine on the patio.
Something in the middle. I'm in the middle. So it is interesting. And I had wondered how that had been for you because there aren't many, or like everyone, I mean, we had a baby boom this year, but no one had kids before. So
is that right? Nobody on the team does?
Well, Crystal had, Crystal had, and then Shannon had crew. Yeah. But
so a couple.
All of the kids were like from the coaches.
Yeah.
Wives.
And I think that's how Utah, like I said, like we're just on young teams now, but that's just because we're older. Yeah. You know, so all the teams are going to be young in perspective to our age.
Yeah.
But I forget that. And that's why sometimes I'm like, well, why didn't they ask me to do that? they probably thought I couldn't get a babysitter in time, or because I was at a kid's soccer game, or, it's like, but I forget. I just think we're all the same. And then I'm like, oh yeah, we're not.
I'm going to be calling you like, Mary.
But I also I love being a sounding board for people. And I love for people, like one of the girls had asked me a question about what I thought about something. She's like, you're kind of like the mom of the group. I was like, that's cute. Like, I'm not offended. I was like, oh, like, I love that. I want people to look up to me and know that I've been around and I know what works and what doesn't. And there's been another couple of girls that I was chatting with after a loss of a game. And like, what are we going to tell the guys? Like, they need to do this and they need to do that. Like, what are you going to say? I'm like, nothing. Like, they're already hard enough on themselves. Like, what they need from us is support. They know they messed up. Right. They know they turned the ball over, or they didn't shoot well, or they slipped on defense. Whatever it is, they know. Right. Coaches told them. Their teammates, I'm sure, have told them. They don't need to hear that from us.
Right.
We just need to be supportive. Know that it stinks. It was a bummer that happened, and they're going to try hard. They're always trying hard.
Right. Move hard. That's what I always think. I'm like, no one takes the loss harder than them.
Right.
So we don't, like, home is home. Work is work. Let them get yelled at and all of that.
Exactly.
And down on each other at work. And then when they come home, like, make it a safe space.
Yeah. Like, after the game last night, we were just like, how's he doing? I'm like, I don't know. We didn't talk that much about it. We actually laughed about other stuff. Like, we went a different direction.
Yes. Like, we leave it there. And I feel like the guys, too, are also good at compartmentalizing. Like, you have to be so mentally strong to be a pro athlete, to deal with all the things they deal with on top of life happening. Like, for him to, like, for that trade to happen and then 2 days start playing again, and then know that his family is trying to transition into that. That's like, I can't even mentally grasp it. Like, the thought makes me want to cry. So
I think that part was harder for him because he was by himself in a hotel for months when I still had the exact same life without him in it. So I was still taking the kids to school and working and having the kids go to a neighbor's house and doing play dates and living life in our home that had all of our stuff in it. When he was in a hotel living out of boxes and suitcases, quiet, without the noise of the kids and stuff like that. So it was hard. I mean, like, it was hard for me, but it was hard for him too, and I sometimes I think with trades, initially, I always think it's harder for the woman because they're traded to a new job with new teammates. Again, like a built-in community. You have all of that. Well, we don't. Granted, I mean, if they have significant others, that's helpful. But for the most part, it's like, hey, you got to start all over. And that's been hard with each trade too, is I feel like I get very rooted and in my ways to where I find like who I am as my own person in the cities I've lived in, where I have all the connections I need. And then you just start all over. And that is the hardest part, is to start all over on like the work aspect with like content creating and knowing local brands and other content creators. It's hard to find that.
Yeah. What has been the hardest part about transitioning here?
I don't know. That one, I'm like through it. Like, it wasn't that bad. We're here. Okay. But I think just initially it was just
the shock,
just leaving everything that was so great in Utah. And I was really, honestly, it's silly, but I was like terrified of the winters. And I grew up in Ohio. I'm used to snow and cold and negatives, not negatives here. Yeah. But some of them. And I think, people are like, well, there's a lot of indoor stuff you can do. I'm like, I don't want to be inside. I want fresh air. I want to be outside. Like how, I just don't know. I'm like, how am I supposed to go months without seeing the sun or being outside? But advice they gave me is like, you just have to leave. Like, come March, April, when you expect it to be spring and it's not, just like take a little trip somewhere and just get out and
start traveling with the guys. Yes. That's like my window of like, oh, you're going to Houston for 3 days. I'm there because it's 70 there at least. You know,
get some fresh air
for sure. That's so crazy, Mary. I can't believe like the trade. Like Minnesota's all we know. So, and like Jordan's going into free agency. So just like, this summer. So it's like, you just don't know what's coming. And the thought of I'm like, wow. And we don't have kids. So
that'll be a little bit
lightens
easier.
The load a lot for sure.
And
but
I think
it is different
too. And you'll notice if you ever aren't on this team or the girls you're closest with are on this team, how you stay in touch. And that's what's been amazing. Like my first handful of years in Memphis, there were 6 of us and we're all still so close. We all went to each other's weddings and each other's baby showers, and we still hang out and talk all the time. I am so grateful for that group, because we were talking the other day, it's like, who would we be without each other? You know, we really like fed off of each other and we're there for each other. And, you know, you can have other friends and maybe their husbands travel, and another thing with ours, it's like they can't even, when they are home, they're not always like physically able to help. Like they're too sore. They're sitting in the Normotech for hours, or
saving their legs, stay off their legs for tomorrow.
And take a nap during the day because they got in at 3 a.m. So and it's just so inconsistent. It's so inconsistent. So that can be hard to navigate and figure out. But you just have to know it's gonna be a wild ride. But yeah, I was so grateful for those girls. And I think as long as, you know that you have the ones you had, and then when you go to a new team, and they're all like, all the teams are so different. I've been so fortunate. Every team I've been on has been amazing and nice.
Yeah, that's what I've heard.
And like, they're not always that way.
Right.
And
or they don't even have women's groups. And they don't.
But I think you'll need to start that, which is weird to be like, what? I want to do that.
Right.
But, even if they didn't have like, just initiate it. Hey, I'm new here. Does any of the girls want to get together? Some might be like, no, we don't do that. Or, oh, this new girl here, she's nice. Like, we're in the same situation.
Right.
I'll go on a walk with her. Or I want to go get some ice cream. So you just sometimes have to initiate it. My first year with this MBA life, we had our GM's wife hosted a luncheon for the girls. And that's when I got everybody's phone numbers. And, I feel like if it wasn't for that luncheon, how different it would have been. We would have seen each other and probably eventually got each other's numbers, but it was just so important. We like immediately started to work out together or volunteer together and
form those connections.
Exactly. So I do my best to host a luncheon at the beginning of every season just to get everybody together, if it wasn't already planned on the books by the organization.
Yeah.
And do the baby showers and Christmas get-togethers just because it's fun.
Yeah.
They're gone a lot.
Right.
We're by ourselves a lot. So why not lean on each other?
Right. How do you like pour into yourself as a mom of 3 boys and a wife?
Sometimes I forget about myself, but I have gotten better. It's been, now that I feel like I'm not in the thick of it, like our youngest will be 4 this summer. It's gotten a lot easier. We had 5 straight years of being pregnant and nursing and everything overlapping, and it was exhausting. And that is definitely challenging in a whole other discussion. But I do make sure I have time for myself. But I feel like easily pleased. Like I just want fresh air. I just want to go on a walk, or I want to eat a meal outside. Like those are the things that just like keep me grounded, is just to have a little time to myself. I like things quiet and calm. And so it doesn't take much. Like I just need like a breath, like a couple breaths and I'm good. But I love to work out and all different types. And so I try and do that with the girls. So at least you can work out, but before and after you get like 5 minutes to have a friend conversation or pickups in the car. My kids, every time they get in a car, like, why do you always listen to this? Because I'm always listening to podcasts. But because that's the only time I have to like learn stuff now, and everything else, it's always go, go, go. And would that be your advice, or what would be your advice to moms to pour into themselves or not to forget? Yes,
with multiple kids.
For moms, I mean, it's like they say how hard it is. Like when your kid's napping, it's like, okay, I might have an hour and a half and I need to work out, shower, clean the house, unpack or pack a bag for my husband. Like you don't there's all this stuff you could do in your free time. It's like, what do you do? But anytime my kids were sleeping, that's when I took me time. And maybe just to work out or shower. But I was like, I'm not going to clean the house when they're sleeping, because I can clean when they're playing, or I can clean while they're watching a show. So I really tried to take advantage of the time that it was quiet to do anything I wanted to do, whether it was to make lunch or I like to bake something or work on a craft, color. I really try and find that quiet time to myself. And even at night now, like before I got married, I was so nervous that I was like, oh my gosh, my husband and I have nothing in common. How are we supposed to last a lifetime together? We have nothing in common. Obviously, we have a ton in common, but as far as our main interests, like I want to be outside. He likes cold air conditioning. I want like bright and refreshing. He's fine to sit in a basement, and like I want to go jog outside. He would never want to go jog outside. I'm like, what are we going to do? I had like this little panic attack, but it's great because we have so much in common, and the time we have together, we max it out. And then we're also completely content in the evenings after the rush of family life. He can go do his thing for an hour. I can go do my thing for an hour. I might want to paint my nails or read a book, watch a chick flick.
Yeah.
And actually, he just learned what the word rom-com was the other night. He's like, a what? Like, rom-com, romantic comedy. He's like, I've never heard of that. I'm like, where have you been? You've seen a few of them with me. But yeah, so I just, I think it's, me time obviously is important, but also like spouse time.
Yeah.
I think when you have kids as a mom, you just put everything into them. And my husband's done a great job of reminding me, like, I'm still here. Like, I'm still your husband. I still love you. Like, don't forget about me. Because, you come home and your kids are so cute and they come running to you and you pick them up and then you walk right past your spouse. And he's like, wait,
hi.
You used to give me a hug and kiss when you came home and now you give it to the kids. So I'm also very conscious of that, just to keep, don't put your spouse on the back burner either.
Yeah. That's probably the biggest one. So everyone says, once you have kids, things change.
They do. So you just have to be aware of the changes and make it work.
Right. Wow. Mary, I love when we talk, I just learn like new things, or you just like give advice that just put a lot into perspective on how to navigate it all.
And if you're not in it, you're not going to know.
Right.
And you're not, even with
go.
all the advice that you could hear, you could take it and listen, but you have to figure it out yourself.
Yeah, for
and
sure.
You will. Everybody does, but it is nice, and sometimes we've had very sweet friends who look up to us and ask all the advice in the world, and I'll come home and we don't pillow talk, but I'll occasionally talk to my husband about, what advice I gave and help it, and sometimes it's like, oh, that's really nice. And sometimes it's like, they don't have a chance. Like, it's really rocky. It is. And they kind of want to try.
Right.
It's like, what would you do in this situation? It's like, we wouldn't be in that situation. So it's really hard to
give advice.
And I could definitely say what we would do in that situation. Yeah. But it wouldn't have gone in your direction, because if you went to a party, I would be like, okay, cool. Because I trust him. Yeah. And he trusts me.
Right.
And then he'd call me and he would leave after 20 minutes because he doesn't want to be there. Right. Not because I'm making him leave. Right. It's just how we are. So
yeah. And I think that's funny too, because we had a big conversation about that too, of like our own relationships and Mike's personality, Jordan's personality, and like they're just very like calm, cool, level-headed guys, nice guys. And
they're
like,
very similar.
And Jordan really admires so much about Mike because he sees a lot of himself in him. And one thing I remember us talking about is like when they say, oh, he's such a great guy. And like, you're so lucky he's not out doing X, Y, and Z. And we were both like,
what do you expect? Are you kidding me?
We're like a trophy for doing what he's supposed to do.
Yeah.
Like, do you get those comments often? And what's your reaction to like, you're so lucky he doesn't cheat on you all the time, or you're so lucky?
100%. I get them too often. And and from day one, even like before we were married, people are like, oh, you're so like, you got a good guy. I'm like, I know, because I chose a good guy. I'm not choosing a bad guy. Well, who would you choose in a partner? Like, you choose someone who respects themselves, respects you, and is kind and caring and smart and makes you a better person. That's typically what people look for in a spouse. And that's what I got. Those were my expectations. And I think people think because he's an athlete, he gets like a pass that he could make, bad choices. And it would be like, oh, well, they're exposed to it a lot. They are exposed to it a lot. Way more than what a teacher would be or an accountant. Right. I get that. And that can be hard when pretty things are dangling in front of your face. Yeah. But, does someone tell someone's husband who's a teacher, oh my gosh, you have such a good husband because he doesn't cheat on you? Right. No, like my sister's not hearing that about her husband. Right. So it's all in the grand scheme of things. But yeah, at the end of the day, my expectations were to find somebody who respected me. Mm-hmm. And I did. And granted, he is an incredible guy. Right. And I am aware of that. And it's been interesting because I always thought I was like a nice, good person. But then he has made me be nicer and better. I'm like, wow. I love that. Like, that's what it's about, So, we'll say stuff to each other and he'll tell me what he would have said. I'm like, ooh, that's good. I need to do that next time. Yeah. It just makes me more aware of things. And like with the kids, he's so much more patient. I mean, I'm with them more, but he's definitely taught me a lot on keeping my patience.
Yeah, that's what I always say, because people will say the same thing to me about Jordan. And like, you're so lucky you don't have to deal with that. I'm like, well, from the very beginning, mind you, Jordan and I too have been together since college. And it's like
time.
that expectation was set
then
8 years ago of like, this is what I look for in a partner. And there's nothing that can like sway that of like that expectation of what I want and what he wants. And his standard, is just like mine and all of those things. So it always would make me laugh, and still makes me laugh when people say like, you're so lucky. I'm like, I feel very lucky and I feel very blessed every day with my husband. I'm like, you're the best. Yeah. You make me better. Similar to Jordan's so sweet. And like, I can be very blunt and very direct. But I don't mean like, I'm just to the point. I don't like to, I'm just like I'm not really, I don't like to be passive. So like, he'll be like, okay, well, maybe we just, I'm like, I guess I should have, like similar to you. But it's like, I do feel very blessed to have him, but I also know that I'm like worthy of a good guy like that because I've done the self-work and knowing that I do deserve someone who values my time, my efforts, me, everything.
Absolutely. And you brought up a good point about it needs to start from day one. Like if you're he was on the road for 2 weeks and I wasn't there. That doesn't mean he can cheat on you. Right. Absolutely not. Like you got to be stronger than that if you're worth it, and, I know some people, it's like, well, how do you go that long with being one girl for all that long? Because you love them. Like if you really love somebody, you only want to be with that person. And it's easy. Like our relationship is very easy for the most part.
Yeah.
And marriage isn't going to change that. Kids isn't going to change like that, referring to the guys. Like getting married is not going to change. It's not going to make them smarter. Right. Or all of a sudden get their head on their shoulders.
More loyal. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not. So I know a lot of people will, when we get married, it's going to change, and it doesn't. And then they're heartbroken. Or, well, we've got kids now. Well, now it's just more stressful. Right. So that's a good point. Start from day one.
Yes.
And make sure whoever you're with, whatever industry you're in, they treat you the way you want to be treated. Your whole life.
Yeah. It doesn't even have to just be basketball. That's just with anyone. I always tell people like, once you start to bend that, like, that make those exceptions. Well, it was just one time, or it was just this, it was just that, just a message.
I can kind of understand why.
I'm like, girl, it's getting, that's pushing a door. Yes. That's pushing a door for more. That's a whole episode in itself.
Yes.
People are going to be like, hold on, I need to hear this.
Part 2, 3, 4.
Right. But that is like a tough, and this industry is just filled with so many different dynamics that I guess it does make yours feel like one in a million. And then because it's just everyone's dynamic is different, and it's like to each their own, how you operate is how you operate. But you are like exposed to so many different dynamics where you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah. And even when you think something's going right, like we've tons of great people, and then you hear something way later. And then retirement's tricky, I hear.
Yes.
For the guys. That's another, we're at the age where he will be retiring sooner than later.
Yeah.
And again, I have no doubt in my mind that he's not going to handle it well and, choose another path to keep him busy, whether it's golf or whatever. Any emotional change can cause a change in your relationship, and you just have to stay strong through it.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk about your new business venture, because you are a crafty girl, which we all know, and a ton of girls were like, can we talk about the crafts?
I love it.
Let's talk about your new business.
Okay, my new business is Revi Rhine, where I am elevating sports hats. So your favorite team, and just to dress it up a little bit. I used to, I guess the term's bedazzle things back in the day before I had kids. Like for playoffs, I would spray paint my heels, team colors, and totally deck them out in these like Swarovski crystals. And I loved it. And I had all the time in the world to do it.
Right.
And then I took like a 8-9 year break because I lost all that free time, but I still love it. And I have a steady hand. So it's come easy to me to be able to do that. And it's just a creative outlet. I just get in the zone and I enjoy it. And, a lot of people customize things, jackets and sweatshirts and this and bedazzle, whatnot. But hats, I hadn't seen any hats done before. And so I'm like, okay, I really, really want to do something that is unique and not something that everybody's going to have. I don't want to just buy something that half the arena can get. I want it to be unique that not everybody can have access to make them feel a little extra. And I had been, it's been in my head for quite a few months. And then, to start anything is scary to make sure it's going to work. And I want to make sure everything worked on like the legal side of things and the business side of things. So yeah, it was like a week ago, I finally, like I even had pictures for like weeks and still was not posting anything. I'm like, I just don't know how. And I want the Instagram page to look good still.
Right.
So I just
officially
did it.
Yes.
You just have to
take the leap.
Exactly. And so I took it and I'm happy. So
and they're so cute.
Thanks.
I've seen you wear them at the game.
Yes.
The last two, right?
Yeah.
Yes, and they're so cute
Thank
and
you.
fun. Are they going to be for like just players, partners, or can anyone order?
Anybody. So yeah, there's been a couple people messaged me and it's fun because people are like, oh, I have an Alabama hat I want you to do. So I want to do my Ohio State one. So it'll be fun to obviously focus on NBA and playoffs right now because that's what's happening. But then this summer kind of go to do people's college hats if they want to get ready for football season and stuff like that. So right now, like all the colors I have are all Timberwolves colors because that is what I was focused on.
Right.
But it'll be fun to start doing any hat, and it doesn't even have to be a team hat if you don't want it to. Like I was talking to my girlfriend about it. She's like, what about like a hat that I can just wear out to dinner? Like I want it to be a nice hat that you would wear out to eat when typically a hat, like a baseball hat would be too casual.
Right.
I'm like, oh, good idea.
Yeah, like a plain black
and gold.
Yeah.
With just like metallics on it could be really neat. So yeah, so I'm excited to see where this goes. I love doing it. It's time consuming, so you have to figure out what your worth is and stuff, which is always tricky for me. But I think it's a good thing that I've got going on, and I'm excited.
I think so too. And that's another like moment for you to pour into you and like tap into that crafty side that you don't always get the time to do.
Exactly. My kids want to help sometimes. They're like, please don't touch the rhinestones. Yeah. Because I like lay out my designs before I put them on the hat so I can see how they fit. And then I like knock something over and then they all crash onto the floor. I'm like, okay, no problem.
Right.
So you can pick them up the fastest.
You're
try
like,
to keep things calm.
switching.
Yes, I want to scream my head off, but it's fun.
Oh, I'm excited.
Yeah. And then Reevy Rhine, my middle name is Larive. And so my blog initially was Living Larive, which means dream in French. So it's like living the dream.
Yes.
Then I switched it to my name, Mary Larive. And so I always, my grandma's name was Larive. And if I ever had a daughter, it would have been Larive. But I did not. So all my other babies are going to be off of that. Yeah. So Reevy is what we called my grandma. And so that's where Reevy came from. And then Rhine kind of stems from rhinestones. Yeah. I just thought it kind of flowed. A Reevy Rhine hat.
I love that. That's so cute. Thanks. And the meaning behind it too makes it even more beautiful.
Yeah.
I love
it. Special.
Oh, I'm so excited. This was perfect timing too. So we can talk about it and then we can get it out there.
Exactly.
I love that. Okay. What would be your advice to any partner either coming into the NBA or just currently in the NBA?
Yeah, my advice for anybody coming into the NBA or sports industry is just to don't forget who you are. And I'm grateful I have my family to help keep me grounded and remind me of who I am. But just because you have access to stuff, you don't have to take advantage of everything. Obviously, we have a lot of resources that you can use, but just don't forget who you are. Don't forget who your spouse is. Don't forget why you guys are together in the first place. And then to communicate. I mean, I can't stress that enough. It's like nobody can read your mind. They can't. And I learned that from the beginning. Like we were joking, what holiday just happened? Not valid. Mother's Day. So I sent him a link of the flowers I wanted for Mother's Day because I don't want, can you imagine getting flowers? You're like, I don't like those kind. How does he not know that? My favorite flower is this and not that. Like that's just going to cause issues. So I just sent him a little link. Hey, you haven't got anything. These are really pretty. Like I have no problem giving ideas to communicate to something that would make me happy, anything. Or if you're upset about something, you're not going to read your mind. And if they say, hey, are you okay? What's wrong? No, I'm fine. If you're not fine, you need to actually say what's wrong because they did ask. I just feel like that happens a lot and I'm guilty.
Yeah, me too. I'm like, oh, men's one up for me.
Yes. So it's just, if you learn from your mistakes, things happen. But yeah, if you communicate, it's a lot easier. And if you just stay true to who you are, treat everybody how you would want to be treated. You were young. You were freshly engaged. You just had a baby. You just got traded. You're on a new team and know nobody. How would you want to be treated? And so try and remember that with everybody else.
Okay. Is there anything else that you'd like to share, whether it be about your guys' journey this far, about having your own I would say, your own passion projects and different things like that.
Yeah, I have absolutely loved our journey, and I think we've navigated it really, really well. And I've mentioned before, I love to be a soundboard for people, and I think him and I communicate and figure out what's best for us, what's best for the people we speak to. And I want people to be successful. I want people's marriages to work. I want people to feel respected. I really want that for everybody else as well. And, I think if we can just keep being positive influences on others as well. And, I just think hopefully it can go in a good direction.
What's the best advice, I guess, you've ever received when it comes to your marriage? And then what's the worst advice you've ever received?
The best advice? It's so simple. I think my mom told me, is it men are from Mars, women are from Venus? That quote, something along those lines. Just meaning we're different. We're just different. And no matter how much you want them to see life the way you see it, you're not. And that has helped me so much. Like if I walk in and there's, the Gatorade bottles and the Zevia cans all over, that's the first thing I see. And I'm like, why aren't these recycled? Well, he walks in and doesn't see that at all. Or he doesn't see the scuff on the wall that the kids just did that have my body heating up, but because we're just different.
Yeah.
And I think that has been very important, is to know we go through life differently. We navigate life differently. And we've learned that about each other. And I'm always checking myself to be like, it wasn't intentional, because that's a lot of things when issues happen between couples. They're not purposely doing that. And even if the guys have a rough game, they didn't try to play bad. Like, it irks me so much when you hear fans yelling,
yes,
you suck, or
right,
whatever other bad, mean things they say.
Yes.
Because they're way better than you.
Right.
And they're trying their hardest. They don't want to mess up, so I just think that just in life, like, you have to know everyone's trying their best. And if you're not trying your best, then that's another conversation that you need to think, like, why are we doing this if you don't care? So,
okay. And worst
advice, I think I'm grateful I haven't had any really bad advice. I don't think I've had anything bad. Nothing standing out that was bad enough that I was
Were
like,
you
what?
Good. When Jordan was on, we were talking about how, like, people, especially if you have friends who aren't married or in the same boat as you, they see things differently. And if, like, let's say someone does something, I always say, don't get even. Whereas, like, some people are like, oh, do it back to him. If that's what, if he's being mean, then be mean back. I'm like, no. Five. That's not good advice. So I always say that's the worst advice anyone has ever, like, said, is match energy, because do not match energy. You're going to regret it.
Match positive energy.
Yes.
Not the negative.
Yes. Okay, perfect. Well, that's all my questions that I have. Thank you so much for joining this podcast. It means a ton. I'm sure everyone's gonna just love it. Probably even have more questions. They're gonna send me like, wait, can you ask her this?
We can do part 2 later.
Okay, I'm gonna be back for part 2, and we're in the midst of playoffs, so give us some grace as we're all trying to
everything's a little heightened.
Yes,
but thanks for having me. I always love chatting with you.
Me too. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Bye. If there's one thing you take from this conversation, I hope that it's the importance of staying grounded in the goodness of who you are, no matter the highs and no matter the lows. Be sure to rate this podcast, tag us on social media, and share your thoughts with us, because we'd love to hear them. Talk to you next time.